Sorry.
Sorry.
Just stole your pen and.
So colleagues? Oh, yes, of course.
That's fine.
The date is 18th January. The time is 11:39. This is a regular meeting of the Economic Development Advisory Committee for the city of Emeryville. Would you please call the roll?
Sure. Chair Reuter.
Here.
Vice Chair Thurkoff.
Here?
Member Bukowski.
Here?
Member Golanova.
Here.
Member Grant. Member LaRoche.
Here.
Member Wagoner. And Member Young.
Here.
Member
Boucher.
Boucher.
Here.
Forgot.
Let's quickly introduce our brand new member attending. She's attended many of our meetings in the past, but she's now an official member of the committee, elected, yesterday evening before the city council. And so can we quickly introduce ourselves? Just we'll go around the table if you would please. Alexandra.
Yeah. Spoken on a number of occasions, but Alex from the 4 Point Shares in Emeryville. I'm the director of sales there. Been on the Edac committee for a year now, and that's it.
Ruslana Golanova. I'm Director of Business Development with Silicon Foundation, and we have our first restaurant, Yuzu Ramen and Coffee, at 60 East Hollis in Emeryville. Just started the business like about 4 months ago, so trying to bring the fresh opinions and fresh point of view to that table.
Good. Always good.
And our loyal staffers, please introduce yourselves.
April Shabazz, management elements here as and Amy Cherry. And I am Tracy Young, program manager for Rubicon programs, actually workforce development manager for Rubicon programs. We're a nonprofit that works with the community to end the cycle of poverty.
Hi, I'm Mary Lou Thurkoff, Working Images, a PR and marketing consulting firm, but I have tourism website for Emeryville. It's called Emeryville on the Bay, and I have 12 other websites around the Bay. And we launched that website for Emeryville during the America's Cup, and very successful with what we did there.
12 websites? That's pretty interesting.
13.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Chad, I think you have.
Chad Smalley, yes, Economic Development, Housing Manager.
I'm Ken Bukowski, former council member. I've been a member of the committee since it started, and a former business owner and founder of the former Chamber of Commerce.
Bill Reuter. I'm here on this committee because we're trying to keep a connection between the former Finance Advisory Committee, now called the Budget Advisory Committee, which I've served on for many, many years. And when I asked for volunteers to come over and join this committee, nobody volunteered, so here I am.
Now, remember that we weren't residents on the committee, and I sought you out, remember?
And this group named me chair when I was out of the country and unable to defend myself.
That makes sense. We didn't.
Anyway, so are there any public comments before we begin with the agenda?
I have one
Go right ahead.
request, not a public comment. Is there food allowed in this room and beverage?
Like for lunch, yeah.
Being that this meeting is at 11:30, it's always like I'm rushing to get here, and I wish I had a cup of coffee or a glass of water or just something. If Emeryville could spring
Yes.
for us to have just some type of refreshment, especially that it's lunch.
I think that's possible.
Okay.
And I think the staff has heard you loud and clear, and so I'm sure.
I went to Candyland with my daughter the other day. I had some cheese
I'm happy to go. Yes.
Thank you, though.
She's already on the case.
Okay,
No,
thank
we
you.
usually just starve and then we get out of here
Yeah.
and go eat.
Well, we don't have
Restaurant.
time. Yeah, I have something after this. Thank you.
I'd ask for a motion to approve of the minutes for our October 19th meeting. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Yes.
Great. And a second? Yes, okay. Have you all had a chance to take a look at them? They look okay to me. All in favor of accepting the minutes, just wave your hands up. Passed unanimously. Thanks very much. We move to.
I'd like to ask
Go right
you,
ahead.
if, when I post these videos, if we could put a link to the video in the minutes, that would be very useful for everybody.
I will look into that. I'm not sure what the policy, that's a clerk question, but I'll look into it.
Sure. The clerk's office, I'm sure, can give you an answer on that.
Yeah.
My guess is the answer is going to be yes, Ken. I don't see any reason. We want to make all of the meetings of every committee associated with city business as open and as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
Should be okay. On action items, I'd like to request that we move the two, 4.2 and 4.3 up and make 4.1, which I know is going to be an extended and lengthy discussion, down. The other two have time necessities, and if we can deal with them first, that would be helpful to Chad and to the staff. Is that okay by everybody?
Yeah.
Good, that's what we'll do then. And that means that we're ready to begin with, Chad, if you lead us through 4.1, committee work plan, no, I'm sorry, 4.2, comments and recommendations, business license tax rebate program.
Sure, thank you. So this, as you can see, is a proposed program. We view it as sort of an easy first step, perhaps a symbolic first step towards developing a more supportive program, a set of programs, suite of programs that are targeted to small businesses. And the origin of this was really came up during the conversations during the Fair Work Week initiative. And during that conversation, it was highlighted by then Council Member Asher that there was some interest in some sort of financial relief for independent retail and restaurants, those being the businesses most affected by the minimum wage hikes as well as the Fair Work Week discussion. And so through this, but it was, we were mindful not to develop a program that was extraordinarily expensive to administer or costly in terms of what the program benefits are. It needed to fit within the realm of possibilities, and it needed to be, we need to be cognizant of the fact that we haven't gone out to the business community yet and polled or understood yet what folks really value the most. So this was viewed as sort of low-hanging fruit. We went to the City Council on November 15th with a study session to see if there was additional support for this concept. And the way it's structured is as a rebate of the business license fee that's paid. It's called business tax. The city business tax is collected. It's 1/10 of 1% of your gross receipts, as well as the fire inspection fees, which is another fee that the city collects. We would rebate that using economic development funds. By looking at targeting the program to independent, that's not national branded, but independent retail and restaurant, we estimate that would be roughly around $40,000 a year if everyone who was eligible participated. And as you can see in the program documents, we're also proposing a cap on the amount to be rebated. That was an item that we asked the City Council about in terms of equity. There's a very small number of businesses that pay substantially more than $2,000 a year in this category. Not many at all, but in the interest of equity, it sort of makes sense, and it made sense to the City Council to put a cap on the total rebate eligible amount. So with that, we put together this program. This is a draft document of guidelines that serves two purposes. One is it formalizes the program, what the rules are, what the eligibility requirements are, what the rebate amount is, how it actually works, the application forms. It also gives us a tool to, when we're having discussions about what does the city do for small business, or what kinds of benefits do you offer, what incentives do you have. Well, this program document is formatted in such a way that it's attractive enough to hand out to those in response to those inquiries. So with that, we have some discussion questions specifically that we're asking the EDAC for feedback on, and then depending on the response to those, the plan is to make changes as necessary to this guidelines document, and then return to the city council with the document for final approval of the program, as well as a budget allocation from the Economic Development Fund to fund it. And then the 2017 year business license taxes collected would be eligible for rebate to those businesses. And those are due, my recollection is like it's March of this year.
March 1.
So I'm kind of hoping that we can make a quick turn so that businesses aren't carrying that fee, any longer than necessary.
I had a chance to attend the study session, so I'm familiar with the document, but vigorous feedback is most welcome. Ken?
I'd like to recommend an additional rebate for those Emeryville businesses that hire Emeryville residents. This way, we would know which businesses are being friendly towards residents, and actually each year present an award to those businesses that have the most per capita Emeryville residents, based on their size. I think that would be very good for the community. So I don't know how quickly you can put that in place, maybe not this year, but perhaps next year.
This was, my understanding from the work session and from other discussions I've heard, this is really a kind of first step, a start towards trying to do what we can to encourage folks who are getting going here. So yes, that could be considered down the road.
Okay.
Any other feedback?
I have a question. Chad, can you please explain this $2,000? Like, I understand it's a maximum, but does it mean, let's say, if the business pay like $500 a year, for example, it's like 100% completely $500? Would you agree to that?
That's right.
And even if it's $25, it really doesn't matter how big, up to $2,000.
Right. There's a small number of businesses that pay. There's a couple that pay slightly more than $2,000, and there's a couple that pay substantially more, like 3 times more than $2,000.
Yeah.
And so, but there's such a small subset of the universe of businesses, and there's a list attached to the item. There's such a small subset of them that it just, in the interest of fairness, we felt like setting a cap somewhere high enough that we're not disincentivizing reporting, but high enough that we cover almost everybody's full liability, which this does.
That's true.
It's like 90% of the eligible businesses. And then there's a couple that would be capped out, and they would only be eligible for $2,000 of the amount.
Yeah, I did some calculations yesterday, so it's like even if a small restaurant make about $1.5 million,
Right.
it's still very small
Yeah.
amounts they pay
That's right.
per year in tax. So that really makes sense. But only one concern I really have, quick representative of small business, that I recently received this Emeryville tax return forms, and it actually says due date, I think it was January 1st, but yeah, I think it says returns are due January 1st, 2017, and received after March 1st. But knowing the business, even we do tax return every year, right? So it's impossible to do tax return by January 1st. That's why, I mean,
Oh, I
first
see.
of all, it's very strange that due date is January 1st. It's really very strange. Second, honestly, what I think, knowing the business and how all this, tax stuff done, mostly all businesses probably file right before that date when they have to pay extra money. So let's assume it's March 1st. And then we are saying here that we have to apply for the rebate. The last day is March 1st. From my side, I would suggest to extend this date maybe at least up to March 15th.
Useful.
To extra,
Oh, absolutely.
extra time.
Useful
That's my
suggestion.
suggestion.
I think Chad's got that.
Yeah,
down.
we will.
Because
April
I
1.
see conflict here.
Yeah.
It's really like we are offering something, but at the same time we put such limitations and boundaries that businesses can react like, what's happening? I mean, you know, it's kind of not quite, you know, we cooperate, I would say.
Are we all content with that? Seems reasonable. Okay, good. Other feedback or comments?
I'm having a hard time just understanding it all, the bigger picture of it. Has there been pros and cons voiced and of what the benefit, I mean, I can definitely see what the benefits are, but to businesses, but what are the benefits to the city and how does this recycle funds and, yeah.
And actually, it's a very good point. I was thinking about this as well, and we were saying that we want to have this program reasonable. So let's say we want to have benefits, but at the same time, it should work for, you know, we are here not just, we have to find this kind of decision which will suit all interests. So I think, honestly, like I had a feeling being in a business that, let's say, maybe we can put the minimum tax from what the companies can start to get the rebates. So, because what I see as more companies pay, really they don't care. So they will not apply for this, seriously. As less they make, they will apply. So what's gonna happen, you guys will receive tons of applications, which you have to process for $25. And those businesses which you really want to attract, yeah, they may be more passive because it's work. Again, it's paperwork, because I do all paperwork for my company. And for now, it takes me actual physical time to go to the city hall, provide all these papers. I wait for these papers back. It's very time consuming. If it's a question of $200 for the big company, I'm not sure how they will be really willing to do that. So at this point, I agree at some point with you. Maybe we can put the minimum, let's say, if it's $25, maybe, you know, maybe we can put like, if they pay $250, I don't know if it really makes sense, but you guys will have less work to do. And another, my suggestion, I was thinking about, maybe we can do it online, so we can file some application online, so we don't really have to spend so much time. Because I checked the application, it's very doable. It's nothing really we have to provide, no extra.
So are,
So-
can I have a
Go right
clarifying
ahead.
question on that? So are you suggesting a
Because it's,
Well, I'm-
a
it's-
minimum eligibility amount as well? And so in other words, a minimum eligibility amount, so as long as the business paid grocery, on the grocery receipts more than the threshold, is that?
Well,
That's just thought
Okay,
so far.
I just want to make sure I understand.
I'm not sure, I hear what you're saying. To me, I'm just wondering, so the rebates definitely would be good for the business, but how does that affect the economy of Emeryville and recycling the money? Because this is all about economic development. So what is it developing? What funds are being recycled and how are they being respent?
Marilyn, you had a comment.
Well,
That, I would like to understand that, then it can make sense.
I mean,
more sense.
I'm not probably the person to speak to that, although I assume the idea is that the city is trying to encourage small businesses to come and be here, and that this is a, just removing one small expense of doing business in Emeryville, and therefore is truly somewhat token. To the point you were making, you know, you don't have to go to City Hall to pay your license tax. In fact, you can't. For some reason, it goes to San Francisco, right? I think it gets processed there, but it's done by mail. And if the rebate is within the description, well, we've already received them, so it's too late for that.
Right.
But you could, it
Next
seems to
year.
me, in the future, you could apply for the rebate at the same time
That's
that
right.
you're. And it's true that the rebate isn't going to be substantial. It's going to be proportional to what your business is. It's not substantial, but I, for one, would never leave it on the table. You know, I would
No.
gladly take
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So I don't think there's any need to incentivize people to apply for it.
But I think to the point, if you're trying to draw in and attract and incentivize, you know the word. Sorry about that. That we might want to draw in bigger hitters. And what I think to your point is, yes, of course, small businesses are going to apply for this because they want the 200, the 250, whatever. But the bigger businesses might leave this on the table because it's not a big enough incentive in order to draw them in. Is it, I mean, I think I'm hearing that. Is that, yeah.
But
Plus it's more.
with all due
more
respect,
work.
I think there are a whole host of other incentives that apply to big business. What people in the small business community feel is that our little pocket is neglected and not paid attention to. So I think it's a targeted incentive. It doesn't have to incentivize bigger business. It's only to incentivize and make feel more appreciated small businesses.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying one way yay or nay. I'm just bringing up points so that I can better understand. And you're saying, so that makes sense to me.
In the room at the study session, there was modest enthusiasm for this for precisely the reasons that Marilyn is focusing on. It was a gesture, a modest one at that, to small business folks in town. And hopefully something that can be built on in the future. Mary Lou?
But a good first step in accomplishing our goals of supporting the small business community.
One of our major
Oh, yeah.
goals.
Yeah. No, it's very nice. I mean, being in that position, of course, it was great to know. I was just thinking, let's say, I see my role here is more to make it more doable and usable for all the businesses. You know what I mean?
Charlie?
Yeah, sorry I was late. I don't know if Chad covered some of this, but maybe just to put this in context a little bit. First of all, it is targeted to small businesses, not the bigger businesses that, may not mean anything to. That's fine because they're not eligible anyway. This kind of grew out of a desire initially expressed by Councilmember Asher, former Councilmember Asher, to do something for small businesses in advance of the study session that we have planned between the Planning Commission and the City Council, kind of a general brainstorming on what all we can do for small businesses. We've kind of been delayed in doing that study session because we've got a lot of other things on our plate. So the idea was to do something that we could do quickly. Her initial thought was to give back sales tax. And we talked about that with the city manager and the finance director and Chad and I and others, and that is just so complicated. It was like, that's not gonna work. So we thought about other things we could do, and this was an idea that Chad came up with. It seems like this is doable, it's pretty straightforward, it's pretty easy. So that's kind of where it came from. In terms of the money, the recycling, where it goes, where it comes from, this, I believe we're intending to fund this out of the Economic Development Fund. And what that is do you all know about the boomerang money? When redevelopment went away, redevelopment agency used to get a big chunk of the property tax, right? It was called the tax increment. And when redevelopment went away, that tax increment got redistributed to all the other taxing entities, the school district and the BC Transit and all. One of those other taxing entities is the city. So the city got back some money that used to go to the redevelopment agency. They call it the boomerang money because it comes back to us, right? The city council has a policy of setting aside 20% of that boomerang money for affordable housing and 5% for economic development. So we've created this fund called the Economic Development Fund, which comes to us from the money that used to go to redevelopment, and this and other economic development initiatives would be funded out of that fund. So that's where this money comes from.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
How much money is in that fund?
$1
$1 million.
Little.
I mean, it's nowhere near the amount of money we used to have to spend on economic development under redevelopment, but at least it's something.
That's
Yeah,
something.
it is something.
It's about $200,000 a year, more or less, it fluctuates.
Ken?
How is the decision made on who is gonna receive the money? What criteria is there? And will the decision maker get involved in the, when you're dating a business, you might start having comments about how they operate. And, is that gonna happen, or is this just gonna be a program where it meets the criteria and then it's granted?
I understand it as the latter. I mean, we're trying to define the eligibility, and if you're a business that falls into that category, and what it is virtually the reverse of the Fair Work Week standard, so it's a relatively straightforward thing to do. if you are in that category, you are eligible. And as long as it's paid, and as long as there's no, outstanding code violation or something ridiculous going on, then we prove it.
Okay, so if someone doesn't like the business, it would still could be approved though?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Indeed.
As long as they fall under the criteria.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
the
No,
criteria
I
is,
think
the criteria is very
perfectly
objective.
fine. I checked it.
With, Chad, do you think you have enough feedback on this now? My rough and ready sense is, can we approve this idea in principle, details to be worked on, including perhaps some of our, from committee members' suggestions? Do I have a motion to approve this program in principle?
Yes.
Very good.
And that includes looking into the benefits of hiring residents? Does that, really important?
Why not try for it now, or is that too awkward, Chad?
That requires a whole, I mean, that's sort of a different,
Okay.
part of the problem is the data needs that creates,
Yeah.
because I gotta figure out
Okay.
who hires what. But
that's-
I
that's on the
do think we
agenda.
need to do that.
That's on the agenda.
Another problem is that it's not the small businesses, which are generally, unfortunately, low-wage businesses. There are a lot fewer people living in Emeryville that can work at a low
Yeah,
wage
sure.
than there
You're
are,
right.
so.
Yeah.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ken. All in favor of approving this program in principle with some feedback on details, and of course this goes forward for further consideration. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. I see unanimous approval. So Chad, you will vote. And then we do move on the agenda to the facade program.
Thank you. So on a related note, while we were at the same city council meeting when this concept was being discussed, of the business license rebate, I brought up the fact that over the last, which was then about 6 or 7 months that I've been here, I had received 3 independent requests for the facade grant program, which used to be run by the redevelopment agency. And I felt like mentioning that was responsive to what I was hearing in the small business community. And asked the city council if we could reestablish the facade grant program. Let me outline what so the facade grant program was born in the late 90s, and it was a product of the redevelopment agency. Redevelopment agency made funds available for targeted areas that it was looking to upgrade the aesthetics of the commercial corridors. And so these grants were available initially at a lesser amount. I think it was $15,000 or $50,000 initially, where a business owner could come in and say, I need some new awnings, I need signs, I want to repaint my building, small things like that. Can I get a grant for that? And the city would review those applications and provide a grant and assistance through even for design expenses in the cases where you have a more involved project. And the program was successful. It was originally targeted at San Pablo Avenue and Park. It was then expanded into more zones to allow other small businesses to also be eligible. Over the years, somewhere right around $1 million worth of grants were made approved through that program. And a lot of facades were built as a result of it. And the fact that businesses, without being solicited, were calling and requesting these funds for different projects that they had in mind spoke to me as sort of an immediate need. And so when we went to the city council to talk about the business license rebate program, I also asked them, would they support reestablishing the facade program again in advance of the joint study session meeting that Charlie mentioned. And they approved that. So what you have here is another program document that is based almost without exception on the previous program. So in this pre-dissolution of the redevelopment agency, so it would have been pre-2012. And that means that it has the same grant amounts, it has the same eligibility requirements, it's just formatted differently, and some clarifying points are made. I don't, and the discussion questions I put to the committee here really speak to this overriding question I have, is that whether the facade, improvement, the easiest thing to do is to move forward with the facade and grant improvement program the same way it was used before, because that's already been built and proven. I don't know whether the current fiscal reality, of redevelopment being gone and now dealing with only a percentage of boomerang funds means that it should be run exactly the same way. Perhaps certain limits should be put into it. And maybe that's just out of an abundance of caution, or maybe not. Maybe it's good enough just to move it forward and let the budget process allocate out the money as needed.
This is right up our alley as an economic development advisory committee, no question about it. But as a budget advisory committee member and ardent defender of the general fund, there's a potential conflict here. My role here is enthusiasm for doing things that make small businesses in particular more attractive and more effective and more successful here. How it's going to play out financially, that's difficult to say.
Well, once again, this is intended to come out of the economic development.
Got it.
Right.
Not out of the general fund?
No, not in fact.
Well, that eases my heartstring just a
Well,
bit.
that, you can,
Okay, let's chat. Mary Lou? And then,
okay, 75,000, is that per, for the whole, for 1 year, for, per grant? So
Max.
that's what was bothering me. That was a red flag to me, because if we only have $200,000, and we haven't even talked about marketing yet, that's,
We have $1 million.
over how many years?
Well, you have $1 million of accumulated balance in
Oh,
the account, and 200,000 per year that comes into it.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
also possible that you might look at a staged or timed implementation of this, where originally and again, this has to go to the city council for appropriation. I am looking for a recommendation on the size of the program, so that we have somewhere to start with. $75,000, by the way, is the maximum grant size, and we don't, you might recall that, I don't think we did many at the maximum, is my recollection. Yeah.
maybe what we do is determine what we would like to see leave our fund every year. Maybe we have a cap of how many grants we give out per year.
Sure.
And also it says here, grants will be awarded on a first come, first served basis.
Yeah,
That's kind of,
That's one way
maybe
of
we
looking at
can
it.
have more
Competitive.
clear criteria on priorities, like prioritize based on streets even, because when I go around the cities, there is really very ugly looking streets. And some places really need, upgrade as soon as possible. And another, what I feel like Emeryville now is really developing in a certain urban kind of style, image. A lot of young people coming and all these new condos, very nice, beautiful, and suddenly we see this kind of old buildings. So let's say if we want to really maybe merge by parts, kind of upgrade the image of the city based on, on what is already around. So like, for example, our restaurant facade is really looking not good. We would love to upgrade it and match it to the condos which is around us, which is really high-tech urban style with all this glass and, kind of that style. That will make sense because it goes together in one design and makes a full city. That's nice. I'm kind of not agree with awarded in the first time, first
Tracy, a comment?
Yeah, so it says over here that the facade grant programs was well received and provided assistance. This is on page 3 of the introduction. And it says businesses over the years with $100 million in grants approved. So I would be curious to know, in the introduction page.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know who was granted those, how that $100 million was, $100 million, how that $1 million was allocated, how many grants was that, and how many years, who received it, what they do with the money, you know what I'm saying? Just to get a little bit of background on that. And I hear your point, but I do also hear people who live in Emeryville that are a little bit disturbed by the whole loft look. and that Emeryville's losing some of its natural, like, you know, grit and culture that it used to have, which comes from, you know, so in terms of image, you know,
What is our image?
what is our image and who is to say what our image
go back
is and
to
who
that.
likes that image, I think. And then I'm wondering, and you know, I agree with like this first come, first serve. I'm wondering if some of the stipulations that could be put in that would be perhaps somebody who has not had any, has not done any renovation in the last so many years. And that be part of it, you know, like, so some new business that comes in that just renovated can't then get this grant because somebody that needs it for upgrading does. And so that there be some type of stipulations there, and that maybe capping it at a certain amount of grants per year, having a deadline of application, and then the review process being a bit more strategic, not just to give it to anybody,
As they
but
come
yeah,
along.
but it to be made, to be given to those that need it, and that it be in line of improvements of improving, yeah, the
Ken.
cities.
Is there any tie between this and the Community Preservation Task Force?
That committee doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, and then, does this apply, can residential property owners apply to this? Because sometimes you have a business in a residential property, and if the residential property looks pretty bad, then the facade of the business might not be.
You have to decide that.
So the way it's written now, in order to be eligible, the property has to be in an area designated for neighborhood commercial. And I don't, and there's a map. I don't know that there may be some residential, Charlie probably knows better than I don't know how many residential structures exist in those zones.
Okay.
Avalon would be the main one.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point, that could be,
Okay.
we can puzzle over.
Other comments? Yes, by all means.
Should I, can
Of course.
I? I have a question.
You are definitely at the table.
If you offer snacks, you can talk about it.
Okay. Under, page 6, I don't know if this kind of answers the question of what the parameters or guidelines, but it's under other requirements that contractors must comply with all this stuff, payroll, hourly labor, so I don't know. I just want to point that out.
This page, actually, I have some more comments here. Here is a lot of conflicting information. Like, for example, it says that applicants should sign the contract with the city for this rebate. And then it says that you have to do the work, pay the contractor, and then
Yeah.
submit
Yeah.
for review. It says for review of the reimbursement. Does it mean that if you
Well,
don't like it, then you will not pay
We have to
back?
make, we have to
or
make
what?
sure that the costs are eligible, right? I mean, if you, for example, if you've got a renovation project where you're building a new kitchen and also building a new storefront, and you have a grant for the storefront, we have to make sure that the costs that we're paying are actually for the storefront or under the terms of the agreement.
It's
Language-
review of
language
cost.
little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah, that's what,
It's
that's
a
what I
review
mean.
of cost,
Yeah.
not review of the grant,
Okay.
of approval, I think, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Can pile in and then,
Do you have to pay prevailing wage, and does it have to be a union contract?
It has to be prevailing wage, and that we can't, I raised that concern, and we can't get around that because it's public funds, so.
Can you do it yourself if you're a contractor?
You can do it yourself in
Or-
any case.
Alexandria?
Paints?
Is there a way, and I don't know if this is reading too much into it, but is there a way for us to suggest or mandate or give them a Alameda County contractor list so that way it is somewhat local rather than them hiring their cousin or friend who lives in Sacramento and all of that's associated with it?
Well, they might be cheaper, but the cost.
Yeah, yeah. Just
Being a small business, I would not support that. I think it's for businesses, it's really a matter to find the best case scenario, and then we say here that we will be required to provide at least 2 bids from contractors. So it means even city wants to see that we're really working hard to get the best case scenario.
Pretty common.
you know, just as general background, I'd like to say that one of my pet peeves is that whereas residential landlords are responsible to maintain property in a livable condition, commercial landlords can and do push all maintenance off on tenants, including exterior painting, and that just seems like basically unfair to me. In terms of facade, I wonder if this could include sidewalk repair or landscaping that the city requires of a business, like street trees are a topic that has impacted my business, and also a sidewalk.
That's not repaired by the city?
But that's an interest, we would have to look into that.
Not for commercial properties.
Because there, again,
That's typical in all cities.
There's-
And even landscaping, I was asking to plant a tree and it wasn't solved.
In Oakland, residential property owners are responsible
Yeah.
for their sidewalks too.
Exactly.
Emeryville.
Berkeley's not, I know that, my sister's got sidewalk.
No, and if somebody trips on your sidewalk, you have to pay.
Let's see if I can detect the drift here. In principle, are you folks generally in favor of this?
Yes.
Matters of detail are obviously still on the table. But generally, in principle, the idea of making funds available for this sort of improvement, especially for small businesses, is a good idea. Okay. Any more feedback for Chad before he goes back to work with others on this program? What else do you need to know?
I'd like to just touch a little more on this targeted eligibility question, because I think it's a way of getting two things done at once. One, limiting somewhat the scope of the program and the budget implications of it, but also trying to be more strategic about eligibility. And I suggested, at the discussion question for perhaps two thresholds where it could be established, is one way of doing that, where you have $50,000 maximum one threshold, 75 or whatever. In order to encourage the kinds of projects or kinds of businesses that we in particular want to help. And I don't know if there's any taste for this or not. I'm just throwing it out there because I'm interested to take a temperature on it. But we hear a lot about spaces that have been long vacant as maybe being something that should be targeted, whether new or not. That perhaps in those cases that, they need additional consideration. That could be one way of structuring the program such that it limits the cost for while incentivizing an activity that we want to incentivize. And just a suggestion. I don't know if there's any support for that out there or not, but.
So that would increase the market value of it?
That's not
To
the
entice a
objective.
new business? I'm
Well,
just wondering what.
To make it easier to get somebody, to get the tenant space occupied.
But that benefits the owner, yes?
All owners of the
So I wonder if there's,
not business.
okay, somebody owns a building and there's 3 storefronts,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them looks okay, the other 2 don't, then you'd want to complete the image so that they all.
Yeah.
There is this bigger overriding concern of what the design and image is gonna look like in that block.
Right.
How that block goes with the places
Right.
across the street,
That's-
you know.
One thing I
To
might
me, that would
mention,
be,
We should.
in the previous program under redevelopment, we did have an architect on retainer who was available to help people with their designs.
Right.
It was the guy actually who designed the Adeline Place residential project and the Lake Splitter Pizza Building. Satish Mohendra is his name, SCFM Design. He consulted with us he did a lot of facade improvement grant designs.
As an on-needed basis.
but that's as
Yeah.
the business came in, right? To me, for it being a blank space, something about that doesn't feel
Yeah,
comfortable.
vacant space?
Yeah, vacant space.
Well, the objective, I guess what I was getting at is that a lot of what we hear is that there are spaces that don't have any tenants in them for a long time, and that's not good for the neighborhood. And in other words, you have a blank, empty tenant space there that folks would like to see commercial activity occurring in. And if we could somehow lower the barrier to entry, because frankly, one of the barriers to entry, and I'll just lay this bare, is that the impact fees for a business that's locating in a previously untenanted spot or a converting spot are extremely high.
Okay.
And so we have small businesses that are maybe capital strapped that are unable to get into that. And what it does is it inadvertently creates an incentive for well-capitalized businesses like our chains and our large businesses to
come and take
because they're
some.
easier able to
Yeah.
handle that.
It would be nice if at the same time, though, the city could require the landlord to pass that financial benefit on to the tenant to some extent.
Right, see that, you.
That may be,
That's
legal,
my,
but,
that's the
I mean,
other
that's why
side of it,
she's
yeah.
objecting. She doesn't want the fat cat landlord to
Yes,
get
yes,
a
yes.
break.
Well, they do,
Yeah,
the
you can- yes.
landlords exist, that's a valid criticism. The landlords exist in a competitive marketplace. I mean, they can only rent what, they can't charge more than neighbors. I mean, it's gotta be, there's more than one landlord. In other words, it's a heterogeneous market. So the rent is what it is. And to get into the city involving itself in that transaction, as far as the rent, goes into a legal world that I am not prepared to speak to today.
Any other feedback that would help here? All right?
Well, I think I'd like
Yes, go
to,
ahead, Mary Lou.
I'd like to just suggest that we do have that architect available, or some architect available to, and once this committee decides exactly what our images and words, we could help, it would just help control that, the building and design, so that the city is all cohesive in some way. I mean, it's gonna be different in different places, but we have to make sure that it all
We have
pulls
plenty of adopted design guidelines for all the different areas of the city. So those would apply.
Okay, so that's good.
Okay. So we're in favor of this in principle. We've given feedback to Chad, and I think that's where we stand. I'll entertain a motion to approve of this program in principle. Take our feedback into account, please. And we'll see how it works out, and we'll keep our eye on it. Is there someone who will move approval in principle? And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, raise your hands, please. I see unanimous response. Okay, Chad, you've got your
Thank you.
feedback.
And I will keep you abreast of when this goes to city council, so you can provide additional feedback.
And that leads us to the forever work. Trying to figure out who we are and what we're up to. This is a carryover from 2 or 3 meetings.
2015.
Exactly. And at one point, I remember, I asked you all to bring a list of things that you thought were high priority. I've done that, and I'm going to distribute it for what it's worth. Perhaps some of the others have
Did
done.
we discuss that already?
No, we have not.
Oh, okay, so maybe I just.
I don't really think so. So we're trying to find out if, in fact, there's a kind of cohesive zeroing in on a common project idea. So this is a very preliminary, very rough and ready kind of thing. These are very, very individualistic and personal on my part. And you'll notice that there are some things here you might say, why the hell is that on the list? For example, expand Emeryville around to West Oakwood Park and to Central Berkeley. Tap Alameda County for funding bus yard development, capital expenditures, and operating costs. That's one of my constant, what do I say, rants, I guess. Pet peeve, you'd call it, pet peeve. I'm willing actually to follow up on this one personally. Ruth Atkin was the city council member who was the coordinator between the city and the funding agencies in Alameda County government. I'm not sure who on the new city council has that responsibility. John. I'd like to work with John to see if we can't get more money for Emeryville expenditures of various kinds. And so I'm putting that on my list of things that would help develop Emeryville economically.
It's not gonna work, Bill. They've already got this stuff, it's a private company, and so it's not gonna get any more than it's already possibly allocated, unfortunately.
But I'm not gonna give up on it.
Okay, no, I know, I go to
And if I
every
come back with my tail between my legs, and you can say, Bill, I told you so. But I'll try to tackle
I
that.
have fiercely pursued that,
I
believe
know
me.
you can, I know you can. Well, that's my list, and if you folks would come up with lists of your own, maybe we can have a rough and ready start to talking about what we should focus the attention of the group on.
Well, I like number 4, and I hate to say this, but I think number 4 should be an assessment district so that you get the entire city in fiber optic. That's the only way you're ever gonna get a uniform fiber optic circumstance, and it would be beneficial for all the businesses to do that. So that's a proposed suggestion.
Well, I know that we've been working on fiber optics, there's been discussion and comment on it. Where do we stand now, Chad?
We have nearly completed the assessment of what the broadband coverage of the city is. And the preliminary, it has yet to be finalized with some on-site investigations from which we need assistance from Public Works. But from the preliminary information, the broadband coverage in Emeryville is very good. Fiber to the premise is a different thing.
Seriously?
And could be expanded and would require some creative financing tools in order to explore, but that is.
If you went forward with that and everybody in the city could use the same carrier, you would save a lot of money, because right now everybody's paying individually, AT&T
Yeah.
and Comcast. So the reason people would go for it is because you would have a common carrier and it would save you money. And they'd have superior service. And it would be one of the first areas that did that. It would be, it would really be innovative. I'd put a lot of thought into that one. That's my suggestion.
Okay.
Well, again, I don't want to turn this discussion of where this group wants to focus into Bill's list.
No.
I hope that you will all bring your lists and your agendas to the table.
I have a question about this one.
Of course.
So, yeah, so I've been carrying this around for
Right.
a couple of years.
It has been around.
Objectives: support economic and job growth, strengthen the local tax base, and retain businesses, improve and invest in the Emeryville community, workforce development. So those were like 3 big topics. And then we had little things underneath them that we could maybe pick and choose. Does everybody have this?
Is that the same?
It's an attachment.
Oh, it's in there, okay.
3 to the staff report.
So,
Attachment 3, staff report.
Yeah, it's good.
I know I've read it. So much.
You know, when you talk about workforce development, the city of Napa has a workforce development housing program where they provide housing for people that are working there, and it's a very successful program.
I think we're at the basics, trying to develop the workforce here.
Okay.
I think we talked about the schools and internships and mentorships and,
We did.
and, you know, things like that. That's kind of where we were at, but that's a good idea eventually. Anyway, we've just gone over these things so many times, I just thought
Yes.
we could go back and look at what 2 things we could do, that we could accomplish something, and by the end of this year, say, oh my gosh, we did produce something that has our image together.
Mary Lou is zeroing in on my fundamental concern. For my sins at one point in my career at Cal State East Bay, I was named the chair of the first strategic planning council of my university. We spent an enormous amount of time thinking about what we wanted to do and did almost nothing. So, you know, even if it's bits and pieces, friends, that we know will have a boost to the economic development of the city, that we can put our shoulders behind and help support in some fashion. That's what we're really aiming for here. So please, stir yourselves, think about things that matter to you. Check the old list, as Mary Lou is pointing out, and let's see if we can't focus on some things that we just might actually do. We've done some things in the past. Just go ahead, please.
I'm in so many meetings about a meeting, I
Exactly.
solve a meeting,
Exactly.
and then there's another meeting, and I would, if we could maybe even make an agreement for us to come back the next time for everybody to have, and then for us to maybe make a motion to agree on top like 3 or 4 items that we would stand behind in this year, or give it a full year from the moment we stand behind. So maybe it would be from, what was next month?
February.
Yeah, our next time we meet, so it'd be like February 2017, so that gave us like a 12-month span to work on a deliverable for these items, and that somebody could spearhead each, like, so that we're really getting specific. And
Tracy, I like the sound of that. Can you all come with a list, a short list, 5 or fewer?
Yeah, that raises a,
Go ahead.
we gonna meet monthly again, like the
Or
budget
not, we're
committee is?
meeting every
every other month.
every other month,
Okay.
Yeah, so
which
you'll
is
be back
better
here.
than quarterly.
Right.
Yeah,
You'll be back here.
right.
We also have this work plan that all these things were not accomplished.
That's right.
Okay, so we
very
need
well,
a
yes.
work plan that, okay, we're gonna do a marketing package for the city, and it's gonna be done by the state, and the city's website's gonna be done by the state.
Right.
You know, we just need those things, and we have to stick to it. Or we're not gonna have anything to show for our accomplishments,
Well,
which
there's
we're
like-
supposed to report at the end of the.
Yeah, well, that's why
year.
if we set something in motion, we give it a date, we say that this is what's gonna be done, and we outline it, we do it. It makes it easier, to me, it makes it easier to do if I see the eye on the prize. And you know, we meet every other month, but perhaps, I don't know how people feel about this. Perhaps we can work on this list, and sharing the list with each other before that, or is there something that we?
Subcommittees, I think, would be smart.
Okay.
We're, yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
can we go over this though and
Well,
see?
hang on
what-
just a
yeah,
second.
okay.
Well, because let's try to figure out what our resources are. We are, of course, a resource for these kinds of things personally. Like I'm going to tackle, probably to my despair, centered around that. And you can always do that. You can always handle that. You also, of course, are all here in part because you have networks. I have networks. I'm not a business person, but I'm connected, for example, to Residents United for a Livable Emeryville, which is a list of 130 people. They meet monthly, and I can get feedback from them regarding things that seem to matter to people who live there. We all have our networks, so bring your networks into play. Bring your own resources into play, and come with 3 or 4 or 5 things you'd really like to see us charge at. And don't forget to look at the lists that are already out there, as Mary Lou was pointing out. And then let's come up with a hard work plan.
So, well, I just thought maybe since we still have a little bit of time,
we
we
do.
could, can we go over some of these
By all
things and get
means.
a conversation going?
By all means.
I mean, I see this going over.
Mary Lou, lead us through the list.
We got
Here.
It's
That
in your
one.
packet, actually.
Should we do, and
I've got a couple.
so we can't do this till we,
Yeah, I'd rather
Yeah.
start doing it without.
I have a big one if somebody wants it.
Oh, no.
Oh, are we coming? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Is that the same as this?
That's it.
The action item.
Yeah, it's the same.
Not quite, because ongoing is a longer list here than it is here.
Is there some way that if the business wants to locate here, that when they come into the city could assign somebody to work with that person to go over all the details?
That's usually.
Right, so I should be reading the
Me.
other list.
So and mainly it's me connecting them to the folks they need. It depends on what they want to do.
I forgot to mention our other resources, of course, the city staff. And to the degree we can shunt burdens off on them, that's traditional.
Well,
You know, we don't want to drive them to their graves or knock Charlie off his bicycle or anything like that.
am I also seeing that
Should I
there-
be reading this list instead?
but I also see that there's something here about the draft for the work plan for the fiscal year.
Well,
Yes.
So that's something too.
Let's focus
start
on
strategic.
zeroing in on things we all care about. Mary Lou, do you want to lead us?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I have, just from 2015, identity was very important. the whole internship, work development program, and fiber optics. Those were my three then. But that's where I was.
I think, weren't we gonna at one point do like an inventory of buildings to see what types of businesses could be attracted here by looking at the structures we got?
Oh, on that.
Not, well, I haven't been here long enough to know whether that was done, but,
Because that helps with the marketing, you gotta know what you have available in order to attract.
Charlie, is there anything like that readily
Yeah.
available?
Well, yeah, I mean, we do, I don't know about the conditions, but we do have a database on our website
Right.
of space
space
available.
yeah.
Yeah, we should look at
It's
that.
updated, what, every month?
Yes, it's updated every
Right.
month, and then I have access to the brokerage software that can tell you. In fact, I could make that a standing monthly report to you all if you wanted to see what
That'd be
properties are
good.
available.
That'd be
You
good.
wanna-
That's
you
a
wanna
very
find somebody, you
straightforward
gotta know
thing
where
to
you're
do.
gonna put
That
them.
would tend to help us focus
We
on
have
our
a
energies and
consultant
effort.
also under contract that updates the space available.
Okay. Anything else at this point we can
What's
pitch in?
EBOTs?
E-bots, that's,
E-bot.
well, if you notice this list, it says FY 14-15 and 15-16, which is over. And
Long
that
time.
ended on June 30th of 2016.
This is
E-bots is the Emeryville Berkeley Oakland Transit Study, which was completed and adopted about 2 years ago.
So we could,
I don't think there's anything for us to work on.
That's
though.
done, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's done.
So,
Right, cross that off.
okay,
so that was a study, is that where the Nobi came out of? No. Okay.
No.
Novi is,
And was there
real
any-
estate.
It's a real estate term in order, yeah, in
Yeah,
order
no,
to,
we didn't come up with that. That existed before.
okay.
So number three's already been done, right? We revised the economic development information on the city's website? Have we
No.
done it? No?
No, we're
no,
still.
absolutely
That's an
not.
ongoing thing.
Okay. It's a struggle in progress.
And we have a plan for it from that previous committee that was doing the welcome package and what businesses need on the way. I have a whole plan for that needs to be revised. So the next three things, support Berkeley Emeryville Bio Corridor.
Yes.
That goes into our image and identity also, and develop and update economic development and marketing materials. So I think we still will need a subcommittee to just go over all that together, and whoever wants to be on it, and then come up with suggestions for our image based on all those things.
Does this relate to small businesses, though? Those are bigger businesses, right? No?
The bio
Yeah.
corridor
The bio.
tends to
There's
involve
a lot
larger
of
businesses.
startups.
So that's not really
Big
gonna
ass.
be our focus, right? It's more small businesses?
It's not a focus, but they're part of our image in the city,
Okay.
and trying to market the city.
Well,
It's
just let
been-
me
Can someone-
clarify one thing. This committee is not a small business.
No, it's not
Right.
It's
entirely
the
that
Economic
way.
Development Committee.
Yes.
And so, I mean, our focus has been small businesses, but this committee is concerned with all businesses.
Right.
This committee would throw its arms open, wide open, to a big tech firm on the corridor if it came in under proper circumstances and ready and willing to contribute to employment and tax paying here in the city of Emeryville.
Yes. So I have some questions about this, the Support Berkeley. One of the things I had just written down and thinking of is even with internships and all that, but partnering with Oakland and Berkeley school systems on different ideas in order to increase skills and help with youth in terms of developing the workforce here. And I'm wondering what kind of partnerships that we have and why is Berkeley named here and not Oakland?
Well,
and-
so let me back up. So those are separate things. Workforce. The Berkeley Emeryville Bio Corridor is a joint effort that we've been in for several years with the city of Berkeley and Wareham Development to promote together the bioscience companies in the Inner East Bay as a bioscience location, as a cluster, because individually we're not very big. But together we are, and Wareham is uniquely positioned to support that because they have a presence in both of those cities. So what that involves is roughly quarterly, I mean, it's sort of ad hoc. We
I
have
understand
events.
that part. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, but we have partnerships like with Berkeley. I'm just saying that these
Right.
are already existing.
Right, that exists.
And
That
there's-
exists,
and there's
but I'm saying, are we
student
opposed to build, like, we have this partnership here, are we opposed to wanting to also build these partnerships with
Absolutely
Oakland,
not.
and because I just see that there's, especially right now with so much going on in terms of community development, not, which also involves workforce and lower socioeconomics, that there might be just different ways to partnership in terms of increasing workforce. To me, it's all about increasing skills and education and all that within the local community, which then increase wages and also help to contribute to the workforce. So,
Absolutely,
yeah.
yeah, well, that's-
Yeah.
No problem.
This is like identifying job training, right?
Job training, internships, developing, bringing in, targeting nonprofits to possibly want to work in this, in Emeryville, bringing in social justice type of CBOs and/or youth development CBOs, and trying to attract them to come into Emeryville, and mentorship programs and so forth, but possibly could draw off of existing CBOs, but just having them expand locations and also doing some Emeryville focus seems to be in need of it, and yeah.
We want to list those resources, right, so that we know where to look and who's out there?
List the resources, list, identify, encourage, incentivize, all of that, and really strategically how that works to the economic development of Emeryville and its residents.
Could I say that's workforce, so interjurisdictional workforce development partnerships?
Yes.
That
Yeah, I would say, work, I would say,
Nice.
but it's also, it's community/workforce.
Okay, got it.
Yes, because wanting to tap
I
into
think
community
this is going to be
building.
very high on Tracy's list. of
Yeah.
in our
You
next
think?
meeting.
Yeah.
It was on my list.
Yeah, that's why I'm sitting next to her.
It's a virus that's going around on that.
Yeah, we've.
No, that's
Perfect.
That's good.
But it goes with the city council's overall plan too.
Other comments or questions along this line to help you focus on your chore for next time, which is to come in with your pets.
I have questions.
Go right ahead.
Okay, the next two, I'm just going down this
Oh,
list.
absolutely.
Respond to inquiries from businesses wishing to locate in Emeryville. Pursue businesses that will strengthen the Emeryville economy. Now, how is that proceeding at the moment? Who does that?
I do that.
You do that, okay.
And it sort of is a function of the space available and what we hear from companies that are coming or going. And I respond to inquiries from businesses wishing to locate in Emeryville. And it's a function of what specifically those are, depends on the environment. Right now, there's a lot of interest in cannabis businesses because it's a growth industry. And we are working to develop, regulations for those kinds of businesses, so we're not ready yet to actively pursue them, but they are pursuing us, and I respond to those comments and help coach them through the process. So.
Could you share with us the
Samples?
types of
Nope.
No, I mean the samples would be great.
You have this at the next.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Ken's question, despite its.
Okay, so then
Inference.
proactively,
Yeah.
is anything, what is going on to proactively go out and pursue new businesses? Or are we not there yet?
We're not quite there yet, and a lot of it is because we are in sort of a constrained environment as far as space goes. There's not a lot of space available, but I do, for the few properties that are available, I talk with those brokers, talk about what their targets are, offer my assistance to accompany them and to give them materials about the city, generate data that supports the case they're trying to make. If they're trying to make a business case to a business that wants to locate here and what they're on the fence about something, I try to offer solutions through data and we're being responsive to that. So it's broker driven and driven by the space available.
And is there a strategic plan around that, what businesses you
No.
want here?
That's what I would like to address that in this, as far as what
What do
industries
we
you want
need?
to see in the
Right.
near term. I mean, there's a lot of talk about diversifying our economy here, and this would be a good opportunity to address that.
We want a cafe on every corner, right?
We talk about, when we talk about businesses, a lot of, draws, we're talking about storefront type businesses.
Mhm.
But what type of like commercial space, and I don't mean warehouse commercial space, but like, not retail. Not retail, commercial type space, office space, yeah. What kind of space do we have available?
We have a good chunk of office space available.
Yeah,
We have a lot of lab space, but not a lot of it available. We have a lot of retail space, but not a lot of that available either. So really it's about office at the moment.
it's really bad
And
office.
I mean, that's what's here. And some of the blocks of office that we have are so large that they're very difficult to find tenants for. And that's because of the departure of things like Jamba Juice, like AAA, moving back to Walnut Creek, things like that free up big chunks of space that the brokers are disinclined to dice up into multiple pieces. But
We need like an Oakland hub, but in Emeryville.
Can we create, like, at one point we had
An Emeryville hub, yeah.
At one point, we used to have the
Right.
Emeryville stroll, and that used to involve a certain number of businesses, and people would know to go to those. Can we create something like that, or like with the restaurant, can we put some package together where people would subscribe to it and then, try out all the different places or something like that?
A restaurant.
Well, that's on here, it's, to develop a website business directory.
Yeah.
But, I also was in print advertising for many years, and we no longer have yellow pages or neighborhood directories, but there is a way to do like a virtual directory, or, so if somebody wants to, like, I'm looking for, a restaurant, I want a noodle house, or, whatever, a hotel, your
There's
business.
some of those items that were put into the welcome packet, plus online,
Uh-huh.
an interactive one online,
Right.
and then one in print, so people could pick it up.
Chris, how relevant are these in the face of Yelp? I mean, you want to look for a cafe and you're in Emeryville?
Yeah.
It'll tell you everything.
It's for,
Let me go back
Randy.
a bit to office
Randy.
space. Charlie and Chad, how does the city prosper from office space? What's the economic return on having lots of office space in there?
Well, on balance, I'm not sure it's a big moneymaker.
probably not. The
Biggest moneymaker, of course, is hotels.
hotels, then retail.
Hotel, of course, we know, they transfer occupancy tax, is a
Right.
wonderful
I
source.
mean, actually, the worst moneymaker is residents.
Right.
Of course.
But offices are somewhere in between.
More like a
Offices,
jobs
though,
housing balance.
in some respects drive the TOT.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
gonna
that's-
say.
So
I
there
mean,
is sort of
even,
degenerates.
and to be fair, even departing businesses still drive,
Yeah.
to still drive the TOT. So is there, if we have an abundance of office space, is there a way to take AAA, for example? They occupy 7 or 8 floors of the building. Is there a way to convert that into partial lab space, so it is more appealing for a pharma group that wants to come in and kind of plug and play into that?
It's usually not a cost-effective solution, but I'll let
Usually the tenant will do their own tenant improvements.
Oh, okay.
Because first of all, because they're very specific to what they need.
Mhm.
You can't just trick it out and
Yes.
expect somebody to move into it. But also it's real expensive.
Very
Millions and millions of dollars go into those
Yeah.
lab tenant improvements. And you don't want to do that on spec, I don't
Right.
think.
Because we have that grant fund,
Well, this is helpful, this is helpful to me to keep my perspective and keep my defense of the general fund intact.
Could I
Yes,
bring
sir.
it back to, instead of this big quagmire that we seem to just get lost to, those first 2 discrete items? Now, first of all, the rebate of the license tax. Now, when do you want to bring that to the city council?
I'd like to go February 21st.
I mean, and I'm sure the city council's not going to wait around to see what this committee thinks about it. But,
But if you
you
want,
know,
if you want.
frankly, I would have been ready to say, let's approve it, period. Because I really don't think we had a lot of details to worry about, and a lot of discussion on it. So I think we could have at that point made an affirmative decision. The other one with the facade grant, I mean, that's something that Chad wants to bring up in the fairly near future, it seems like we could maybe ask for volunteers for a subcommittee to talk about those details that were brought up. I think primarily the criteria for approving grants, distributing them, rather than just first come, first serve, which I don't think we liked very much, and come back, you know, yeah, bring our
Okay.
big wish back, but let's come back
With
and
something concrete on that
something
particular-
concrete on something that's coming up soon.
Do we have a volunteer?
But is that on us to, are we able to do that? I didn't know that that was,
Yeah, we're a little off.
About committees.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got the Brown Act, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this committee, of course, is subject to the Brown Act. They're all appointed and, you know, you get your quorum, and you get your meeting dates, and it has to be publicly noticed and all that kind of stuff. There is something called ad hoc committees. And an appointed body such as this can create ad hoc committees that is less than a quorum of the group, and that has a specific purpose, specific assignment. And when that assignment is done, the committee then goes away. Ad hoc committees are not subject to the Brown Act, so you can meet at somebody's house or whatever if you want to. You're not making any decisions that are binding, you know, you just simply bring your recommendations back to this committee. And we'll have to check in with it. I mean, this is all spelled out in the rules of procedure that apply to all committees in the city. I don't have those memorized, so I don't remember exactly what the details are. But we'll have to look into that and check in with the city attorney and see, because if it turns out you're a committee that is subject to the Brown Act, then we have to notice your meetings, we have to prepare an agenda, we have to have it posted on the web, all that stuff. But if we can appoint ad hoc committees that are not subject to the Brown Act, then you can just go off and do your thing. And Mary Lou probably remembers that.
We have done that.
That's what you had before with
We
that
have done that.
marketing committee. Yeah.
You and,
I have two friends that left.
So, yeah, I mean, you can certainly do that. You can certainly appoint that committee as long as it meets the criteria. for
well,
being ad
I'm
hoc.
perfectly willing right now to form an ad hoc committee, if I can find two people willing to work together, to deal with the details and give you a solid feedback on the subject of the
Facade grant program,
Sounds like Maryland was
I'd agree
volunteering.
to do that.
okay, would someone work with Marilyn on that?
I can, I mean, I will try.
Okay,
Well, my only one concern is I'm pretty new to Emeryville. I'm just very honest, I don't know the city very well. So I really know the park where mostly our place is located. And I kind of feel that may, you know, kind of lack of the information, because I feel it should be not just the part I know, it should be about all the city. So, but I'm fine.
this is not a bad team though, because.
I would volunteer
Marilyn
too.
knows
Bring
the-
that fresh look.
Marilyn knows the city,
That's a-
and I've noticed that you read the documents carefully and have detailed comments on the documents. Knowing the city,
I would
person
volunteer
reads
to
the
work with
documents closely, sounds like a good team to me. I move that, I entertain a motion for forming an ad hoc committee to take a look at the facade program and give feedback to Chad et al.
I'd like to be on it too.
Three.
I got three.
But does that, what's the
I'm not
number?
sure, I think as long as it's not a quorum of the full.
It's not a quorum of the committee.
And a quorum is how many here?
More
We
than
have
half.
five.
Yeah, we got 9.
Yeah, we have
So
nine.
5 is one.
Five's good.
So up to 4.
Well,
So
then we-
so they make the recommendations, but then do we as the,
No, they report back to us.
then we yay or nay? Okay.
Yea, nay, or
Or
modify,
change.
amend,
Yeah,
and then
okay.
pass it on.
So I would move that myself, Marilyn, and Eslana be in the ad hoc committee on facade development.
Is there a second?
A second.
I'll second.
All in favor of that motion, please raise your hands. I think it's a great idea, and in fact, it suggests we're actually doing something rather than sitting around talking about doing something.
I'd
Thank you
like
very
to go
much.
back to what Marilyn said about the tax thing. I think we have all the details to Chad that we wanted to change.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that that's supposed to go straight for, and
I
you can even
entertain-
tell him it doesn't need to come back to us.
I entertain a motion to approve the program as modified to the city council through Chad on the subject of the rebates.
To recommend approval.
Is there a motion for that?
Yeah.
Yes.
I make that
So
motion.
we got a motion and a second.
In a second.
Good. All in favor? Grand, thank you very much.
I'm glad we don't have to say.
And I'm not sure you know, I declare this meeting adjourned, and thanks very much for all your work.